What's up, Stratego brothers? This is OuweSok with the third episode of Broken Pieces, and today I'll be looking at the Marshal. So let's look at the setup statistics of 15,000 games, and we'll see that in 5 out of 6 games, more or less, the Marshal can be found in the first or second row. Most players like to have their Marshal readily available for attack or defense, while in 1 of 6 games the Marshal is stuck behind in third or fourth row, and in generally I think placing it in fourth row is just a bad idea unless you play against someone who you know and is known for hiding his Marshal and general for a long time, and by placing your Marshal in the last row you can beat him at his own game. But I think in general you like to have your Marshal available for attack or defense in the early game. You will not be surprised to see that in almost 60% of the setups the Marshal can be found behind the lake. Hard to scout, easy to defend, and still quickly available in 2 lanes if needed. Second row is also quite popular. Probably defending a captain or a major that's in front of it, and in the third row it's just really everywhere where it can be found. So I don't think this is really surprising you. Important pieces can usually be found behind the lake. So yeah, let's move on to the next subject, and that is the value of Marshal info. Knowing where the Marshal is of your opponent is very valuable information, and we're going to have a look at the start of a game between 2 very good players. When you have learned the position of the Marshal, it sends a big message to the general. You can come at me anytime you like, and not be worried about losing material. Another thing that happens if your Marshal is known is that all your pieces lose a lot of bluff value. Yeah, let's almost pause here. Okay. So, in this game, after 10 moves, one player has lost Colonel and Captain, and won a Major and Sergeant. I think that's a nice amount of material, and in exchange for that he knows where the Marshal is of the opponent. So I thought it was an interesting spot, and I asked it in the forum, which side do you prefer? And as you see, 13 players prefer to be the person that has Marshal info, and only 1 player would like to defend this position as with his no Marshal and defend the material that was won. So the players prefer to have the material disadvantage in this spot and know where the Marshal is for the rest of the game. I don't know if this 13-1 is a bit influenced by the fact that Max has a spy in a very good position. Maybe if it was just comparing material, maybe more players would have chosen to defend. But in this spot with the spy in very good position, the advantage is to Max and not to Ender. Okay, so I think in general to find the Marshal is very good information, and it's about worth a full Major in the beginning of the game. That's how I estimate it. Later in the game, when you know more things about the big pieces of your opponent, it might be totally fine to come out with your Marshal to capture just a Major or just a Captain. But if you have no idea where the Marshal of general of your opponent is, I don't think it's a very good idea to come out with your Marshal to get at a known Major. Okay, so that's about Marshal info. So what should you do when your Marshal is found and you didn't really plan for it? Maybe you captured a piece that was that you expected to be a nice big piece and ended up to be a lousy sergeant. maybe you got outplayed and your marshal got scouted. In any of these cases, I mean, there's many things you can do, and it really depends on the position. But if you're down material and your opponent has more info than you about your big pieces, then at the moment your marshal is found, maybe the best thing you can do is just enter the position of your opponent and hack at pieces that you know have moved, hoping to dodge the spy. If you're down material and information, it's better to lose quickly than lose really slowly, and take the possibility that you might get some material back before your opponent has the spy in position. Other things, if the situation is relatively equal, maybe you just defend the position, maybe your colonels are still hidden, maybe you are quite immune to general attacks. But yeah, on average, you want to be very careful now, because the general of the opponent will be lurking somewhere and looking to attack your position and capture material, and there's really not much you can do about that. When you find the marshal of your opponent, what do you do? I think a lot of players are just coming in with their general directly and hacking at anything that moves. I think that's a bad idea. You really want to plan your attack. You want to find some pieces. You want to find a cluster of moved pieces that is not defended by the marshal, or you want to find a nice big piece like a major or colonel for your general to come at and really get some good material out of your marshal info. You will find that when you move up from bronze, silver, gold to general to platinum, that more and more players are going to be defending vigorously the identity of their marshal. And I think if you are looking to improve your game, you should really look at this and ask yourself how often is my marshal shown for too few, and how often do I find the marshal of my opponent before he finds mine. And if you find reasons for this and strategies to avoid that, maybe you're on your way to improve your game. The last thing I want to tackle is if you found the general of your opponent, how often should you capture it if you think that it is or may not be defended by the spy of your opponent. I think in general, capturing the general of your opponent and being recaptured with the spy is not a huge loss. It's of course not favorable for you, but it's not that bad, and it's the possibility of gaining a general, which is a really big blow for your opponent, is really tempting. So it is either a situation of win a lot or lose not too much. So anytime you capture or you trap the general of your opponent and you think there's a decent possibility that he is either bluffing, bluff protecting, or maybe he thinks that your marshal isn't your marshal and he's not protecting his general, just go at it and hack the general and just hope to see that it sticks. I think if it's like 20% probability that the general is not protected, I think you're already at a good spot to capture the general and have long-term profit for this play. Anytime you are just completely sure that the general is protected by spy, there can still be some situations where it is a good idea to sacrifice your marshal and capture the general. If you still have your spy, if you know where the marshal of your opponent is, these are two favorable situations for you to hack at the general of your opponent, and especially if you're able to follow up your sacrifice with by invading the position of your opponent, maybe with a colonel or with your own general, and capture some more material to compensate for the marshal sacrifice. This can be a really good idea. And the typical example is if you are being blitzed by a marshal blitzer on one side where he's really not accomplishing much, and you have you found the general of him sitting in the middle, then it might be a good idea to collect your Marshal and general, sacrifice your Marshal to the general in the middle, and then follow up with your general to find probably some colonels and majors sitting there in defense in the middle. And you could gain some very nice material out there while his Marshal is out of in a bad position. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the Marshal. I hope you picked up something from this, and see you in the forums. Bye bye.